famous royals in the world walks into a radio studio thinking the rules don't apply to him. In just 38 seconds of one comment, a prince's arrogance would turn a friendly interview into the most explosive meltdown in talk show history. Howard Stern sat in his studio that morning, ready for what he thought would be an interesting conversation. Prince Harry was scheduled to appear on the show, and Howard had prepared questions about charity work, life in California, and adjusting to a new country. Howard always treated his guests with respect, but he also asked the questions everyone wanted answers to. That was his job. That was why people listened. Harry walked into the studio with an energy that immediately felt off. He didn't shake Howard's hand when offered. He sat down in the guest chair and looked around the room like he was inspecting it, like he was deciding whether it was good enough for him. "Welcome to the show," Howard said warmly, trying to start things on a positive note. "Thanks for coming in. We've been looking forward to talking with you." Harry nodded, but didn't smile. "Let's just get through this," he said. Robin Quivers, Howard's co-host, exchanged a quick glance with Howard. This wasn't the usual way guests started an interview. Most people were excited to be there, or at least professional enough to pretend. But Howard pressed on. He was a professional, and he'd dealt with difficult guests before. "So, you've been living in California for a while now," Howard began. "How are you finding it? Is it everything you hoped it would be?" Harry sighed, like the question was beneath him. "It's fine. Better than where I was." "Better than England?" Howard asked, genuinely curious. "Better than being trapped," Harry said. "You wouldn't understand what it's like to have no freedom, to have everyone telling you what to do, where to go, who to talk to." Howard leaned back in his chair. "Actually, I think a lot of people can relate to feeling trapped in their circumstances. But you made a choice to leave. That took courage." "Courage," Harry repeated, and there was something mocking in his tone. "You think you know what courage is? Sitting here in your comfortable studio, talking into a microphone?" The room went quiet. Robin stopped shuffling her papers. The producers behind the glass looked up from their screens. Howard remained calm, his expression neutral. "I'm just trying to have a conversation," Howard said evenly. "If there's something else you'd rather talk about, we can do that." Harry leaned forward. "What I'd rather do is not be questioned by someone who makes a living gossiping about people's lives." Howard's eyebrows raised slightly, but his voice stayed measured. "I've been doing this for over 40 years. I interview people. I ask questions. That's the job. You agreed to come on the show? So I assumed you were okay with that." "I came here because my people said it would be good for my image," Harry snapped. "But I don't need image management from someone like you." "Someone like me?" Howard asked. There was still no anger in his voice, just curiosity. "Someone who profits off other people's pain," Harry said. "You make jokes about people's struggles. You turn serious issues into entertainment." Robin jumped in, her voice diplomatic. "Howard has actually been very supportive of mental health awareness and has talked openly about his own therapy and struggles. Maybe you're not familiar with the show." Harry waved his hand dismissively. "I don't need to be familiar with it. I know the type." Howard sat up straighter. "Okay, let's address this directly. You're clearly upset about something. Is it this interview? Is it something I said? Because if you don't want to be here, you're free to leave. Nobody's forcing you to stay." "There it is," Harry said, pointing at Howard. "The American arrogance. You think you can just dismiss people. You think you have all the power because it's your show." "I'm not dismissing you," Howard said, his patience clearly being tested, but still holding. "I'm trying to understand why you're being hostile. We invited you here as a guest. We prepared thoughtful questions. We wanted to give you a platform to talk about the things that matter to you. But from the moment you sat down, you've been combative." Harry stood up suddenly, his chair rolling backward. "Combative? You want to see combative? How about we talk about how you've made millions exploiting people's private lives?" How about we discuss the fact that you're no better than the tabloids you claim to be above? Howard remained seated, his voice calm. I've never claimed to be above anything. I'm a radio host. I talk to people. Some of those conversations are funny. Some are serious. Some are uncomfortable. But they're always honest. And I've never pretended to be something I'm not. Honest, Harry scoffed. You wouldn't know honest if it hit you in the face. Robin spoke again, trying to diffuse the situation. Harry, maybe we should take a break, get some water, reset, and try this again. I don't need a break, Harry said, his voice rising. I need people to stop treating me like I'm some sort of spectacle. I'm a human being. I have feelings. I have a family. And I'm tired of people like him. He pointed at Howard again, making a career out of tearing people down. Howard finally stood up. He was taller than Harry expected, and his presence filled the room, but his voice remained controlled. I have never torn you down. I have defended you on this show multiple times. When the media was attacking you for leaving the royal family, I said you had every right to choose your own path. When people criticized your wife, I said she deserved respect and privacy. I've been on your side. Harry's face reddened. You don't get to be on my side. You don't know me. You don't know what I've been through. You're right. I don't, Howard said. That's why I invited you here. To tell your story in your own words. But instead of doing that, you've spent the last 10 minutes insulting me and my show. Because you deserve it, Harry shot back. All of you media people are the same. You pretend to care, but you just want the story. You just want the drama. Howard walked around his desk, moving closer to Harry, but not in a threatening way. Let me tell you something. I've interviewed presidents, criminals, celebrities, and regular people who've never been on radio before. And you know what they all had in common? They showed up ready to have a real conversation. They didn't walk in with an attitude. They didn't assume I was the enemy. You came in here with your mind already made up about who I am, and you didn't give this interview a chance. I gave it a chance, Harry said, but his voice was less certain now. No, you didn't, Howard said firmly. You walked in here looking for a fight. And I don't know if that's because you're angry at the media in general, or if something else is going on in your life. But I'm not your punching bag. Harry's jaw clenched. You think you can talk to me like that? Do you know who I am? And there it was. The moment that would define the entire interview. 4 words that revealed everything. Howard stared at him for a long moment. Yeah, I know who you are. You're a guy who left his family because you wanted privacy and freedom, and now you're on a radio show being broadcast to millions of people. You're a guy who says he wants to be treated like a normal person, but the second someone doesn't bow down to you, you pull the "do you know who I am" card. The room was so quiet you could hear the ventilation system humming. Harry's face went from red to almost purple. How dare you? How dare I what? Howard asked. Treat you like I'd treat anyone else? That's literally what you said you wanted. You're twisting my words, Harry said. I'm not twisting anything, Howard replied. I'm pointing out the contradiction. You can't have it both ways. You can't demand to be treated like everyone else, and then get offended when someone doesn't treat you like royalty. Harry grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair. This interview is over. You're right, it is, Howard said. Because I'm ending it. I don't let people come into my studio and disrespect me, my co-host, or my team. I don't care what your title is, or who your family is. In here, we treat each other with basic human decency. Bon and you failed to do that from the moment you arrived. You can't kick me off, Harry said, his voice shaking with anger. I'm the guest. And this is my show, Howard said simply, and I'm asking you to leave. Robin stood up now too, her expression a mix of shock and support for Howard. The producers were already moving toward the studio door, ready to escort Harry out if necessary. Harry looked around the room, seeming to realize for the first time that everyone was against him. This is unbelievable. Wait until people hear about this. Wait until the world knows how you treated me. Howard crossed his arms. They're going to hear exactly what happened because this is all being recorded. And when they listen back, they're going to hear a host who tried to have a respectful conversation and a guest who came in with an attitude and refused to engage in good faith. You're going to regret this, Harry said, pointing his finger at Howard. The only thing I regret is wasting my time preparing for this interview, Howard said. I read your book. I watched your documentary. I tried to understand your perspective. And you couldn't even give me the courtesy of a civil conversation. Harry moved toward the door, then turned back. You know what your problem is. You think you're so important. You think your show matters. But in 10 years, nobody's going to remember you. So nobody's going to care about Howard Stern. Howard didn't flinch. Maybe you're right, but at least I'll know I treated people with respect. I'll know I did my job with integrity. Can you say the same? That last question hung in the air like a challenge. Harry's mouth opened like he wanted to say something, but nothing came out. He grabbed the door handle and yanked it open. Wait, Robin said suddenly. Before you go, I just want to say one thing. Harry paused, half in and half out of the doorway. We really did want this to go well, Robin continued. We weren't trying to ambush you or make you look bad. We were genuinely interested in your story. And I'm sorry it ended this way. For a brief second, something flickered across Harry's face. Maybe it was regret. Maybe it was realization. But it disappeared as quickly as it came. Save your apologies, he muttered, and walked out, letting the door slam behind him. The studio stayed silent for several long seconds. Howard walked back to his chair and sat down heavily. Robin returned to her seat. The producers slowly came back to their positions. Well, Howard finally said into the microphone, that was something. Robin let out a breath she'd been holding. I've been doing this show for decades, and I've never seen anything like that. Neither have I, Howard admitted, and I've seen a lot. He leaned toward the microphone, addressing the audience directly. For those listening who might have just tuned in, Prince Harry just walked off the show. Or, more accurately, I asked him to leave. And before anyone thinks this was some sort of publicity stunt or planned drama, it wasn't. That was real. That just happened. Robin nodded. He came in angry, from the very first moment. I tried, Howard said, and there was genuine frustration in his voice. I really tried to have a normal conversation. I had questions about his charity work, about adjusting to life in America, about fatherhood. I wanted to talk about the positive things he's doing, but he wouldn't let it happen. He seemed to have already decided you were the enemy, Robin observed. That's exactly right, Howard agreed. And I think that's the sad part. He's so used to fighting with the media, so used to being defensive, that he can't tell the difference between someone who's genuinely trying to have a conversation and someone who's out to get him. Howard ran his hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. You know what bothers me most? I defended him. I've said on this show multiple times that he had the right to leave the royal family, that he deserved to live his own life, that the media treatment of his wife was unfair. And he came in here acting like I was his enemy. Maybe he doesn't listen to the show, Robin suggested. Then why come on it? Howard asked. Why agree to do an interview on a show you've never listened to, with a host you know nothing about, and then get mad when it doesn't go the way you imagined? It was a fair question, one without an easy answer. And that line, Howard continued, shaking his head, do you know who I am? That tells you everything you need to know. For all his talk about wanting to be normal, about wanting to be treated like everyone else, when push comes to shove, he still thinks his title makes him special. Robin was quiet for a moment before speaking. I actually felt a little sorry for him at the end there. When he said that about nobody remembering you in 10 years. That seemed like such a desperate attempt to hurt you. Howard shrugged. He might be right. Maybe in 10 years, nobody will remember this show or me. But that doesn't change what happened here today. That doesn't change the fact that he came into our studio, disrespected us, and then tried to play the victim when he got called out on it. Do you think he'll talk about this publicly? Robin asked. Probably, Howard said, and he'll probably spin it to make himself look like the victim. He'll say I ambushed him or asked inappropriate questions or something. But we have the recording. Anyone who wants to know what really happened can listen to it. Howard leaned back in his chair, looking tired. You know, I've had difficult interviews before. I've had people walk out. I've had arguments with guests. But this felt different. This felt personal, in a way that didn't make sense. Like he was fighting with an idea of me, rather than the actual me. He was fighting with the media, Robin said. You just happened to be the media representative in front of him at that moment. That's not fair, though, Howard protested. I'm not the British tabloids. I'm not the paparazzi who chased his mother. I'm not the people who wrote nasty things about his wife. I'm just a guy with a radio show trying to have conversations. I know that, Robin said gently. And most people know that. But he's carrying around so much anger that he can't see it. Howard nodded slowly. And that's his problem to work out. I feel bad for him in a way. It must be exhausting to be that angry all the time, to see enemies everywhere you look. He turned back to the microphone. Look, to everyone listening, I want to be clear about something. I don't hate Prince Harry. I don't think he's a bad person. I think he's someone who's been through a lot of trauma, who's dealing with a lot of pain, and who hasn't figured out how to process it in a healthy way. But that doesn't excuse coming into someone's studio and being disrespectful. Robin agreed. You can have compassion for what someone's been through while still holding them accountable for their behavior. Exactly, Howard said. And that's all I did. I held him accountable. I said, you're being rude, and that's not okay. And instead of taking a moment to reflect on that, he doubled down and made it worse. There was a knock on the studio door. One of the producers poked his head in. Harry's team wants to talk to you, he said. Howard waved his hand. Tell them the interview is over. There's nothing to discuss. The producer nodded and disappeared. His people are probably in damage control mode, Robin said. Not my problem, Howard replied. They can spin this however they want. The truth is in the recording. He looked at the clock on the wall. We still have 2 hours of show left. Should we take some calls? I'm sure people have opinions about what just happened. Robin smiled. That might be an understatement. Howard pressed a button on his console. All right, lines are open. If you heard what just went down and you want to weigh in, give us a call. But I'm warning you now, if you call in to defend his behavior, you better have a good argument. The first caller came through. Howard, I've been listening to your show for 20 years. And I've never heard anything like that. You and me both, Howard said. What I don't understand, the caller continued, is why he even agreed to come on if he was going to act like that. That's the million-dollar question, Howard replied. My guess, his PR team thought it would be good publicity, and he went along with it without really thinking it through. And then, when he got here and realized he'd actually have to answer questions, and he panicked and went on the defensive. Another caller chimed in. I think you were too nice to him, Howard. You should have called him out harder. Howard laughed. I kicked him off the show. How much harder should I have gone? You could have really laid into him, the caller said. I could have, Howard acknowledged. But that's not who I am. I'm not trying to destroy people. I just want honest conversations. And when someone can't give me that, I end the interview. Simple as that. The calls kept coming, most of them supportive of Howard, a few defending Harry, all of them shocked by what had transpired. Through it all, Howard remained consistent in his message. He didn't regret how he handled it. He didn't apologize for standing up for himself. And he didn't bash Harry beyond pointing out the facts of what happened. At the end of the day, Howard said during a break between calls, this is about respect. Mutual respect. I respect my guests enough to prepare for interviews, to ask thoughtful questions, to give them a platform, and I expect them to respect me, my co-host, and my team enough to engage in good faith. Harry didn't do that, and so the interview ended. It's really that simple. Robin added, and I think people appreciate that you didn't just sit there and take it. You stood up for yourself. I'm too old to let people walk all over me, Howard said with a slight smile. Life's too short for that nonsense. As the show continued, the story took on a life of its own. Social media exploded with reactions. Some people praised Howard for not giving special treatment to a prince. Others criticized him for being disrespectful to a guest, but everyone was talking about it. Back in the studio, Howard seemed unfazed by the controversy brewing outside. He took more calls, discussed other topics, played some music, and generally continued with the show as if nothing unusual had happened. You seem pretty calm about all this, Robin observed during another break. Howard shrugged. What's there to be upset about? I did my job. I tried to have a good interview. The guest was difficult. I ended it. Done. Moving on. Not everyone can move on that easily, Robin said. That's because most people care too much about what others think, Howard replied. I know what happened in that room. I know I conducted myself professionally. I know I gave him every opportunity to have a good conversation. He chose not to take it. That's on him, not me. It was this confidence, this certainty in his own actions, that made Howard who he was. He didn't second-guess himself. He didn't lose sleep over conflicts. He simply moved forward. Do you think you'll ever have him back on the show? A caller asked. Howard didn't hesitate. No, why would I? He made it very clear he doesn't respect me or the show. I'm not interested in giving someone a second chance to disrespect me. What if he apologizes? The caller pressed. Then I'd accept his apology, Howard said. But that doesn't mean I'd invite him back. Some bridges, once burned, stay burned. The honesty was refreshing. No corporate speak, no diplomatic answers, just straightforward truth. As the show wound down, Howard took one last call. Howard, I just want to say thank you for showing that even princes have to follow the rules of basic decency. Howard smiled. That's exactly right. I don't care if you're a prince, a president, or a plumber. In my studio, everyone follows the same rules. Be respectful. Be honest. Engage in good faith. It's not complicated. And when they don't? The caller asked. Then they leave, Howard said simply. Just like Harry did today. As the final minutes of the show ticked away, Howard reflected on the morning's events. You know, in a weird way, I'm glad this happened, because it proved a point I've been making for years. Fame doesn't equal character. A title doesn't equal decency. You can be born into the most famous family in the world and still not know how to treat people with respect. Robin nodded. And on the flip side, you can be a radio host from Queens and have more class than a prince. Howard laughed. I don't know about that, but I know how to treat people, and I know when to stand up for myself. And today, I did both. The show ended not with drama, but with Howard's usual sign-off, as if it had been just another day. Because for him, in many ways, it was. He had defended himself. He had maintained his standards. He had refused to be disrespected in his own studio. And he had done it all without losing his cool or stooping to the level of the person attacking him. That was the real story. Not that a prince had a meltdown on a radio show, but that a host had the backbone to end an interview